Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more waterfowl patterning, and today we've got a combination of shell and choke that a couple of you guys actually requested to see, or at least wanted to see this particular type of shot through this particular choke setup. And I definitely think it's going to be pretty interesting because we know we have a good performance shell, but how is it going to do through this pretty interesting kind of old school setup? I'm thinking we should see some good results, but we really don't know until we try it. So for the shells I brought out here today, they're not in a fancy package, but these are some Salt Creek shells. They are a 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 1 1/4 ounce payload of bismuth number 4s, moving about 1250 feet per second. And here's what one of those shells looks like out of the package. They are a nice buffered load with a good wad in there as well. And we've seen a number of good performances from these shells so far. So we know that they are some good quality shells, but I don't know exactly how they're going to perform through today's setup. And as for the shotgun we've brought out here today to run those through, I got out my old Mossberg 500 AT, but this one has the Mossberg Select choke on it, which is essentially Mossberg's version of a poly choke. If you don't know about these, they have a collar on them that you can tighten or loosen, and it changes the fins on the inside of the barrel to give you more or less constriction based on how tight you have this threaded into. Today, I have it set to its modified choke constriction, which is roughly between a 7 and a 705 as far as constriction goes. So definitely a much older school setup that a couple of you guys wanted to see some bismuth shells shot through to see how it would do, so we'll see what we can get out of it. But as for today's test, everything is the same as usual. I've got the duck target set up at 40 yards, and I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity from the shell. So let's get you guys to view this target, and we'll take the shot and just see what kind of performance we can get from this old Select choke with a Salt Creek bismuth load. We know the shells are good, but how is it going to do through this Select choke? Let's go over here and take our shot and see what we get. Alright, so that shell gave us 1308 through the chrono. The packaging does claim 1250, but this is very normal for what we have been seeing, which is low 1300s range. So definitely nothing out of the ordinary, and I'd say we're looking just fine as far as velocity goes. But what kind of a pattern did they actually give us down at 40 through that old Mossberg Select choke? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard target, and this is what we got. And I gotta say, looks pretty decent overall. We definitely have a dead duck here, without a doubt. I mean, there's, what, 3, 4 of them through the chest, and one of them right in the neck there. So yeah, we would have absolutely gotten that duck. And there's nowhere on that paper that he can fly to and get away from you either, especially if he moves a little bit farther over to the left, which I think our pattern might be like maybe an inch or 2 inches over to the left, if anything. But still, that is a pretty nice and even spread of pellets. Now it is pretty broad considering the paper is 36 inches wide by probably about 44 inches tall, and we have most of the paper covered. So with these being a bismuth 4, I think you could even afford to go down a constriction and tighten that old Select choke up just a touch more as well, if you wanted a little bit tighter of an overall pattern. But this one right here is pretty solid. It's going to allow you to shoot those ducks out at 40, but it's going to give you a little bit more leeway in at like 20 yards as well. And really, even though we covered the majority of the paper, there's not really anything I would consider a flyer. There might be a couple little voids in there, like maybe this top right corner or so, and maybe one right down here as well in the center of your screen there that might be just a little bit larger than the rest of the pattern as far as voids go, but still not terrible whatsoever, and nothing that's going to be detrimental to how this pattern performs. So overall here, I mean, is it anything fancy? Probably not, but that is a very solid and very usable pattern. That just goes to show that even these old setups that a lot of people really consider pretty much junk in those adjustable chokes can still get the job done out in the field today, as long as you're running a pretty decent shell through them. And with that being an adjustable choke, if you want it a little bit tighter, you can probably get it a little bit tighter very easily. But I think with us setting it to a modified today, that's given us a pretty good middle of the road performance, and it's going to do the job for what you need it to. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and it's one of these larger 2-piece style wads, or 2-petal style, but it looks perfectly fine. I mean, it definitely didn't snag on anything. There's nothing stuck down in there. There's no tears or holes or anything through it. If you can see these darker stripes on the side here going vertical, that is actually the grooves in between the fins on the inside of that Select choke. So we can tell just by that it was flying straight and wasn't spinning or anything as it left the end of the barrel. So looking perfectly good there. And overall, everything looks very much normal. Nothing out of the ordinary here. All right, well, what did you think about that performance right there? Definitely very solid. It's a pretty nice and even uniform spread of pellets. There might be one or two little voids in there, but not enough to be any kind of a detriment to the pattern. So I think that's a very solid middle of the road performer right there. We know the shells are good, and the big question is how were they going to do through that old select choke? And hey, that's a duck combination you could take out and hunt with right now. And with it being a select choke, you can very easily just tighten it or loosen it a little bit on the fly based on how the birds are actually flying. Are they decoying and you want a little bit more spread, or are they out at 40 yards and you might want to tighten it up just a little bit over that? And with it being a bismuth 4, it's going to act pretty similar to how a lead shell would do with different choke constrictions. So overall, that's a very solid performance. So leave your thoughts about it in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Do you have one of the old Mossberg select chokes or a poly choke or anything, and have you tried a bismuth shell through it? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Do you like that pattern the way it is? Do you want it a little bit more open? You want it a little bit tighter? And is that a combination that you would take out on a small duck hunt or something? Let me know all your thoughts about it in the comments. At the end of the day here, is it anything that's top tier to write home about or anything? Probably not, but it's a very solid performer that you could absolutely take out on a hunt right now. And for an old setup that a lot of people love to hate, I don't think we can complain too much about that. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.